George Kern, how are you, sir?
Very well, thank you very much for the invitation.
So I know it's your 140th birthday, but I want to go back in time just a little bit to the beginning of the COVID pandemic, where we saw an accelerated growth for watches. And now we're in the first year where we have a little bit of a market correction, but as we know, these things go in peaks and valleys, minor valleys actually, to be honest with you. I would say that one thing that people forget is the net benefit of the massive growth that we had during COVID made watches relevant to everyone, and that's not going away. Would you agree?
I fully agree. And again, we have to put everything in context. Post-COVID year was a total abnormal year. We are talking about revenge buyings. The second year after COVID was revenge traveling. So you had revenge buyings and revenge traveling impacting, obviously, the whole luxury industry. I truly believe, and I agree with you, that the analog watch industry will be growing tremendously over the next decades, because you cannot fight demography, you cannot fight raise in average income. You have new markets in India, in Indonesia, in Asia, everywhere, even in the Western world, in the US. So the market will grow. What we have to look at is the global trend of the industry. And within that trend, you might have a bumpy road. And we have a bumpy road right now, but fundamentally, I truly believe that we will still have a golden decade in front of us. And yes, also the digital watches, but the access after COVID to more products, enlarge the market.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think one thing that you can't change is the incredible cultural relevance of the watch today. There's not a sporting event, a red carpet event, a movie event that doesn't happen without everyone looking what's on everyone's wrist today. And I think that's amazing. Now, you have an incredible ambassador, Giannis, who's this incredible basketball player, but the story of him as an immigrant, as a refugee, is so compelling. You are really selective in your ambassadors, but he is an amazing one.
He is such a good-hearted guy. We had an event to launch his watches in Greece. I mean, they made a movie.
I love this movie.
There's a Disney movie, and there's a very good documentary on Amazon, which is very cool. And it tells an incredible story of somebody, as you said, who was a refugee, who was extremely poor, but with amazing family ties. And they fought, and he was discovered as a basketball player, and he was most valuable player in the NBA. He won the championship, and he's still modest. He's charming, extremely funny. He's such a great guy, and we're very happy to work with him.
I was watching this documentary on the plane. And what I loved about it was he said, I'm not going to go join the NBA unless you bring my family over as well, because his family is so important to him. And the fact that he was willing to sacrifice his entire career if his family couldn't also benefit from what was happening to him. Like, I'm on a plane, I don't know if it's the altitude, I start crying because this movie is so compelling. What's interesting too is that because of globalization, everyone's able to now watch this film because of streaming services. But I would go even further. I would say globalization, social media, streaming platforms have kind of aligned tastes around the world. And a few very strong brands have benefited from this, and I think that's only going to increase. Would you agree, sir?
I fully agree. I think this might be controversial, what I would say, but the classic segmentation we had over the last decades, 100 years, where you said Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or Asian, or Caucasian, or what have you, male, female. These are blurring. This is a blurring situation. Today you have a kind of new communities. So you have, and these are cross-gender, cross-country, cross everything, because these brands or these trends, also in music, as you said, we all listen to the same music. We all see the same movies. So again, you have new gods, which might be designers. You have new heroes, which might be very different from what was the case in the last decades. So the world is changing, and I truly believe, to be very concrete for our industry, in globalization of taste. And this is why I think for the big brands, at the end of the day, there will be only 5 to 10 really being significant in the market.
I mean, we see it already. You know, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I remember as a journalist in the 90s, you would hear brands saying, this is going to be my China watch, or this is going to be my Middle East watch. But today that doesn't exist. If you want to be successful, you have to be successful around the world, and that's always been your philosophy, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can, for instance, China is a very good example. You cannot be today successful in China if you're not successful outside of China. And they don't want Chinese products, they want international products. And everybody's traveling, right? And this is why these global brands have the same appearance all over the world, because again, you're part of a club. And that club should be the same in Shanghai as it is in Paris or in New York. And this is why you shouldn't try to be too local. Of course, you always adjust sizes, but think global, act local in the final execution.
Let's talk about what's going on today. I would say what really is interesting is we've decoupled watches from being speculative objects. No one's buying them anymore to try to flip them and make money on them. So what's cool is we're now in a period of real end users, real customers, and real customers want really authentic watches. I feel that Breitling is one of those brands because in its category, it's the reference. Would you agree that the future belongs primarily to those brands?
No, absolutely. The world is totally transparent. Everybody knows what you're doing in everything. People can check about your ambassadors, people can check about your ESG policy, people can check about your manufacturing capabilities and what is inside. You need to be totally authentic, otherwise you will be, the social media will kill you, right? And this is why we are so happy to talk about the 140th anniversary, because we are a brand of substance. And you see now, when the tide goes down, you see who was swimming naked. Today, it's all about strengths of the brand, of content, of design, but also of substance, of 100%. History. And if you have all these elements, I think you will be part of you're part of a winning formula and will be part of a winning brand.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we have clearly exited the hype era, and the era that has come up, and I think will remain for at least the next decade, is the era of authenticity. That can be expressed in many different ways, ESG policies, as you mentioned, also in terms of craftsmanship, but really in terms of watchmaking content, that's huge. So let's talk a little bit about the perpetual calendar. Tell me what this means to you and why you decided to implement this to celebrate your celebration for the 140th.
So first of all, as you know, we have an in-house chronograph, the B01. Once you have a very solid movement, you can build complications, and we are a chronograph brand. And this is the smallest and I would say today, chronograph perpetual calendar on the market. There are other chronograph perpetual calendars, but then it's 48, 49 millimeter diameters. And that's the difference versus the other perpetual calendars. And we're building more complications now on our base movements, be it on the chrono or on the automatic in the near future. And we thought it's a new movement, let's use it. For the 140th anniversary, we took 3 pillars, historically, strategically important pillars of our brand. The premier, where for the first time we went, or Willy Breitling went from, I would say, instruments to style. Then obviously the Navitimer, which is the most iconic pilot's watch in the market, and the Chronomat, which was the revival of, in a way, the classic watch industry after the quartz crisis under Ernest Schneider.
Yeah, I love it also. You've got the Premier representing the era of the 40s, the Navitimer representing the era of the 50s, and then the Chronomat, one of my favorite eras, the 80s, of course. But let's talk about the perpetual calendar complication. Why is this so appealing to you? And you were also previously in a brand that was very famous for its perpetual calendar. You've done a different type here this time.
First of all, it's beautiful. It just looks nice. Second, as I said, we did it differently from my previous companies because it's a chrono. And third, we need to be in a price point which makes sense for our brand. I always said we want to do complications, but there are some complications we don't want to do, we don't need to do, because you need to be a compact brand also in terms of pricing. Our average price today is $7,200 as a basic product. I don't want to go to 100, 200, 300. There might be one or two pieces, but that's not our market. Our market, and by the way, it's a sweet spot, is really, let's say, between 5 and 20,000 with an average price of 7,200. And now for Jubilee piece, we can have a product at 52,000, totally reflecting what we are, which is a chronograph brand, but now with a new complication.
It's really nice to look at these watches. When you look at the quality of the finishing of the dials, it's really nice to see what Breitling is able to achieve in a slightly higher price segment, but still there's a value there, and I think that's important to you. There were other brands that made their reputations in introducing complications, but always with a value proposition. Some of them have kind of lost that a little bit, but it's nice to see Breitling is really embracing that.
No, the value you get here for the money, I mean, it's a very expensive piece, but still the value is far better than what you would get at another brand with another brand out there. And this has always been our policy. We don't increase prices just for the sake of increasing prices. You need to add value, product value to such a piece, and this is what we're trying to do.
Let's go through them one at a time. The Premier de Tora at 42mm. It's probably my favorite because it's a really elegant watch. Talk to me about what you think this watch achieves.
First of all, the color combination is phenomenal. So first of all, we have three sizes. We have 42, 43, 44 millimeter. So it's again, for such a movement, which has a certain thickness, the designers did and the construction team did a very good job. It's just beautiful with the rose gold, with the black dial, with these warmths in the product. It's certainly an elegant watch. Then with the Navitimer, you build a bit more sportier, and then of course with the Super Chronomat, even more sportier. But again, it perfectly reflects the fact that we're a generalist brand. We offer everything from, as I said, an elegant watch like the Premier, to even an emergency, which is a tool for professionals.
Which is a cool watch.
But which is a cool watch, which we're going to relaunch at a certain stage. But here, I think it reflects what we stand for, and these are our key three pillars and recognizable pillars.
Super appealing watches. I also noticed that there are some brands that use a synchronized perpetual calendar. You've gone with a more traditional approach that has pushers on the side of the case. The good thing is that means you can also correct it no matter what. Like sometimes on the synchronized one, if you go too far forward, you have to wait for time to catch up or send it back,
Yeah, I mean, if you buy a product like this, people understand, they know, sometimes they explain even to us how it works. They perfectly know what they get and how to treat and how to adjust these watches. You're not just walking in and buying a perpetual calendar. Right. I mean, there's a buying process, a thinking process, and the response on social media has been tremendous.
I love the fact that we're talking about perpetual calendars also in the context of 10 years ago, Apple launched the Apple Watch. And there was this kind of like fear that was going around the watch industry saying, oh no, this may be the end of analog mechanical watches. Now, 10 years later, quite the opposite has happened. In fact, the next generation has fallen in love with mechanical watchmaking and craft. Why do you think this has happened?
Because I think we live in a world of over-digitalization. It's an overkill. Look at people now. You have sicknesses of people walking like this. You have kids now they're stopping iPhones in schools because you cannot talk to these people. Kids are isolated. People don't communicate. Kids don't play. When I go to a restaurant, the parents are there, they're eating, and the kids have their iPad in front of them. I mean, this is crazy, yes. Right? Parents are overprotecting. You cannot go up a tree because it's too dangerous, but you can be in front of your iPad and iPhone. And I think there's a kind of revival, by the way, for mechanical watches, but very interestingly, also for vintage watches. I mean, my son is 27 and he's collecting vintage watches, which is quite amazing. And it's a look, it's a craftsmanship, but I think there's also a question of understanding. You understand, I mean, intellectually, you kind of understand a mechanical watch. You have a platin, you have bridges, you understand, it's like a Lego system. I don't think anybody understands a digital watch or digital car.
Yeah.
I think there's another emotion. In the old days, you could open the front of your car and look at the oil, look at this and that. Today, you call your IT guy, right, to fix your car.
Yeah.
And intellectually, because we're humans, we want to understand. And I think this is why people love that. People love vintage cars, people love vintage watches, in particular young people.
It's incredible. I think it's also because the cycle of relevance for products today, especially digital products, is so short. The guaranteed anachronism is so small that they're looking for perenniality. They're looking for things that endure forever. And I think that's part of their ethics as well. They want things that they can rely on and never throw away. And vintage watches have already proven that relevance, and these watches will also last forever.
Absolutely, and I will say that we're humans, right? Many of us are Epicureans. We like food, we like wine, we like to enjoy life in a very unstable world with wars, with troubles everywhere. So carpe diem, you want to enjoy life, and an analog watch is part of that. It's about quality of life, and it's beauty, it's aesthetics, it's craftsmanship. You can talk about it. You can show how a purple calendar works and explain it to your friends, the 28s, the 29s, etc. You can explain all of that because we're humans, we're not robots. And this is why I think these kind of industries or jewelry or art will be there forever.
Totally agree. You were saying something interesting yesterday during our panel on ethics and sustainability, that you have to lead first with a super compelling watch, and then you have to charm people first with how beautiful it is or how interesting it is from a functional perspective, and then you add that layer of ESG to benefit it more. It was interesting to me also because when I was thinking about it, we have actually a few brands that have taken the lead in terms of ESG. The Schweifele family with Chopard, Jean-Christophe Babin with Bulgari. But you've been a huge part of pioneering this. Why did you feel that was your mission?
Because I believe in it. I've always been doing this, also in my previous companies. I'm a green guy, right? I love the nature. I think we need to protect it. I think we need to protect biodiversity. It's horrible what's going on. But we don't want to be activists. We are not a Vogue company. We don't want to change the world, and we cannot. We need to do the maximum we can in our sphere of influence, and it has to be compelling with the brand. So there are I gave you 2 or 3 examples. For instance, the fact that we decided to go with lab-grown diamonds is a huge step. I don't think anybody at our size is doing this as a company. But we started from zero in the female segment, and I said, okay, let's do it right from the beginning. It's like with the force, in the 20 years back, and suddenly it's forbidden everywhere. And there will be change with diamonds because you have problems. You have environmental problems, you have human problems, you have child work, you have et cetera, et cetera. There's a problem. The second thing is we have a blockchain where we allow the consumer to exactly follow the supply chain. What comes from where, and how was it produced? Consumers want to have a transparency because anyway you cannot hide it. So I prefer being proactive and say what we are doing, even if we're not white. We cannot be white, but at least I want to say the truth. Another thing we are doing is, for instance, because we are in triathlon, right? We support a charity in South Africa called Quebeca, where we buy bicycles for kids living in random villages, and they have no mean of transport. So either as a child you walk 2 hours to the school and 2 hours back, or you give them a bicycle made out of steel, which you can repair. For a couple of $100, and you build the possibility for these children to be educated. Because one of the solutions for all our problems is education. It's the most important thing you need to do in the world, is to educate people.
Yes.
And this is, but it works with our triathlon or cycling ambassadors, and they love to do it because it's close to their heart. So I want in the ESG strategy to do stuff which relates, for instance with Kelly Slater, we work on fighting plastics in the ocean. So we try to make them part of what we are doing to make it more credible. and not to be random in our ESG communication.
I love what you're saying because, luxury, there's always a perception that it polarizes and increases the gap between the have and have-nots. But the best way to close that gap is to give education to everyone, and then it becomes a meritocracy. So I really, I love that. Last question is, you got rid of the part of the watch that I've always disliked, the box.
Yeah.
Honestly, all they do is like pile up in your house and threaten to topple on top of you when you have a big watch collection. You lose them, they get moldy, they just take up space. What gave you this idea? And I love the fact that you say you can have a box, but you have to compensate for the carbon. How many people actually ask for it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a key in any transformation process.
Right.
And you have all these political discussions on energy policies, etc., and changing your heating system at home with, etc. You cannot force people against their will. You need to convince them, and then it will work. And I cannot, and I don't want to force anybody to use an eco-friendly packaging. We have it, that's our base. We explain it's circular ecology, it's made out of plastic bottles, it has no glues, it has been selected as one of the most innovative packagings in the industry. We won every prize. But we ask a consumer, oh, by the way, here's a classic box. Here's a classic box, you can have it. Which one do you want? And it's below 2%.
Wow.
Of the clients asking for the box, because at the end of the day, they're buying a watch and not a box, right? We're in the watch business, not the box business.
Right.
And in a way, I think they feel also embarrassed.
Right. I love that.
Because you explain how sustainable this is and how less sustainable that is. But you might not know that when you buy the classic box, we offer them the opportunity to offset the CO2 footprint of that. But they can do it or they don't.
Right.
So we say, okay, great. Here's your wooden box. By the way, you can spend another 20 or 30 Swiss francs to offset the CO2 emissions for the production and transport of that box. But free.
I love that. And you give them the choice.
You give them the choice. That's the point. Give people the choice. Don't impose things.
George Kern, it's been a pleasure, sir. Congratulations on your 140th anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.